Hey everybody, it's Ryan from Pie Records, and I'm here with Empty Palace from Los Angeles. How are you guys doing?
Doing
Great,
great.
dude.
Doing great.
Yeah.
Awesome. I,
Thanks
I,
for having us.
thanks for coming on. As you might have seen, I do a lot of interviews with bands and especially as of late, a lot of Snappy Little Numbers bands, which you're a part of that group. You want to talk a little bit about being from Denver, moving to Los Angeles, and still being a part of the Snappy Little Numbers group?
Yeah. I'll take the lead here. So Jason and I actually came from Alabama and moved to Denver in the late 90s and found one of the most supportive, awesome punk and, punk hardcore thrash communities. It was a really good time to be alive in that town. And we forged a lot of lifelong friendships over about a 10-year period. I think we were there in the late 90s to the early 2000s. And then we ended up, bouncing around a little bit and winding up down here and then finding Chris. The thing is, all three of us are Alabama. Well, Chris is from Mississippi, but all of us are Southerners also. So we just sort of ended up moving out to LA and doing the LA thing and starting this trippy psych heavy metal band down here together. And it's been a nice journey.
Cool.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, absolutely. So I listened to a couple of your records, and the scope is just epic. How much time goes into putting all that together?
Somebody
It's
else
a
want to take
loaded question. A long time, about as long as it takes for between each two albums. It was like 4 years, so it takes us a long time. We're not the quickest band.
Well, it's intense because there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in the music. Do you want to describe it maybe to our listeners?
Patrick, you're probably better at this than I am.
Sure, man. So what the easy thing for us to write, stuff that we all love is like prog, glam, psych rock, kind of with a little bit of a little throwback thing happening, lots of vocal harmony. Some of it's been ends up being pretty dense, which is part of why it takes us so long to finish. But when you're done, sometimes we could be the victim of trying to make every single song an opus. That may change in the future, but so far it's been really. I'm really happy that it's turned out. But that takes a long time to get there.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, for sure.
Something that came to mind when I was listening to it, it's almost orchestrated. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely on a lot of parts. I could see that note being used. But yeah, I mean, like he was saying, we come from a little bit more of like a, Patrick and I come from like a little bit more of like a simplistic punk background. So this has kind of been, and Chris has been doing a lot of like different types of music. So for us to try to do this has been a little bit more of an experiment, a genre experiment for all of us over the last, God, how long have we been in a band? A long time, 8 or 9 years at this point. So yeah, I mean, it takes us a long time to do this stuff because it still feels fresh and new to us. It's still interesting. I mean, it's not just a formula that we're used to, that we've been playing our entire lives. You know what I mean? So it's still something that we're kind of experimenting with, which is exciting.
I would say as well, like, because I joined the band after The Serpent Between the Stars was already a thing. And so I came in and was like, oh shit, there's like, can I curse on here? Sorry. I was like, there's a lot of like key stuff I have to learn. And I think one of the cool things about, since I've been in the band, which I think was like 2014 or 2015, something like that is when I joined. But we've done so many different iterations. Like when I joined, we were mostly doing like a 5-piece, and there was like a lot of guitar harmonies, and we would just play crazy shows with like giant stacks of amps. Like we played this one show where it was like I had like a vintage tone wheel organ and like 2 synthesizers, and like this, just me alone had just this like slaying keyboard rig, and we kept like killing the power. But we played as like we've played as like a 5-piece. We've played as a 4-piece, and I think like getting to know them a lot more and their tastes and stuff. I always try and write kind of to my audience and just be like, okay, what would like Patrick like? Or since I'm, learning a lot of stuff that he wrote on keys, that's influenced, me in like my own band, and even in the stuff that I, came to the table with for this second record.
So what other band are you in, Christopher?
So I'm in a band called Jamestown Pagans, and it's a organ drum duo. And then Patrick actually, engineered and mixed our record, and then was heavily involved in like the mastering and stuff. So
very cool. Very cool.
And then Jason plays in a band as well too, as outside Empty Palace.
Jason, would you like to talk about that band?
Yeah, I'm a typical drummer where I can't say no to anybody's band, so I tend to be in a lot of different bands at the same time. Yeah, I play in another band called Beginners, polar opposite genre-wise to Empty Palace, a little more pop-oriented style, and yeah, it kind of it doesn't overlap too much genre-wise, so it keeps everything interesting.
Cool. One thing that interested me is what seems like a musical journey for you, actually physically, from the South to Denver to Los Angeles. Could you maybe note some instances where you say, okay, this is why we're going to Denver, or this is why we're going to Los Angeles?
Yeah,
I'd love to answer the Denver. We had it was the late, I'll set the scene a little bit. It was the late 90s. The pants were baggy, the guitars were chuggy, and we had a hardcore band, Jason and I, as teenagers. We actually booked a tour that Jason was so young at the time that his parents wouldn't let him go. So we just went anyways, hung out with everyone on the tour. It's great. Jason, you really missed out. It was awesome.
That's what I hear.
Jason met a girl on the internet, and they moved to Denver, Colorado, and the rest of the band putted around for I think about a year and a half with drummers that weren't really a great match, and then we all just decided that we would just move there because that's where Jason was, so it ended up being a whole 9 or 10. Everybody brought their girlfriends, posse.
Yeah, I was really happy to see them show up at my front porch one day.
Yeah. So
and then, like as I mentioned earlier, when we got there, being so young, I didn't have the frame of reference to appreciate what that place and time had to offer. Like Chuck from the record label. That's where we met him and just became fast, lifelong comrades in arms, and really defined the rest of our lives, I would say, that whole period,
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. So how did you get to Los Angeles, and what sparked that?
Yeah. And I was going to say, there's also a Portland pit stop in there too. So
okay.
we went from Denver to Portland to Los Angeles, and Patrick actually came down to Los Angeles quite a few years before I did. I stayed up in Portland for a while, and things were just getting a little stale up there for me. And you know, LA is the kind of place where you know, it's the same story with everybody. You hate it when you visit it, but for some reason, like as soon as I moved here, it just clicked, and he talked me into moving here, and you know,
well,
it's been great.
I had some of the demos.
Patrick, he had some of the songs on the first record kind of going, and it sounded great, and I was super excited to come down here and for the fresh start, you know. So it didn't take much convincing.
Cool. How did you meet Christopher?
Man, it's hard to believe. It was so random. I've never met anyone on. Well, but the short answer is Craigslist. He literally answered. We were looking like a John Lord style Hammond player, you know, to come in and just play heavy metal organ, and that's a really small. You know, even in Los Angeles where you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a musician, it's really hard to find the organ player is a really small club, especially a like rock and roll or heavy metal organ. You just don't find many guys. And then Chris rolled in and just blew our dicks off. And, you know, he's been with us ever. We've been happy to have him ever since, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't even mean to undersell his talent. I would say he's a better singer than he is an organ player, you know? So we have him singing on more than half the songs now too, you know? Just the perfect guy, just silver bullet, magic bullet guy, you know?
Yeah, I was like, well, and I think too, what got me, cause I just recently like shed my, you know, hundreds of pounds of like vintage tone wheel organs and like went all digital and like new. But at the time I had like a console, like vintage tone wheel organ, which is logistically difficult to move. It's a big thing. And they already had like a keyboard rig. I was like, oh, you already have like a, you know, vintage tone wheel organ at the space. Oh, okay, cool. So I just showed up, all the gear was already there.
Yeah.
Very cool.
We've always been an upstairs venue's best friend, you know?
I totally get that. There's a lot of clubs in Philadelphia. One specifically called Upstairs at Nick's, where the band yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that?
Sounds like fun for organ band.
Especially in the dead of winter.
Oh my God. Chris, I want to talk to you about your organ playing because it really is. It's almost like I don't know how to put it into words. Maybe its own member of the band. You kind of it's got its own personality. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, definitely. It's I mean, I'll try not to derail this entire thing and talk about the Hammond organ for like 30 minutes, but you know, it's pretty crazy because vintage tone wheel organs are not even 100 years old, so they're still a very young instrument by like, you know, many standards. And so I got into the organ basically when I moved to LA, which was like 2010, and I was in kind of like an Americana rock band at the time, but I started listening to more bands and more like old rock bands, you know, where that was more of a regular thing. And then just like watching a lot of people who play like gospel organ, you know, like in like predominantly Black churches, like they just shred and they just have this, you know, I hate to generalize, but like the playing style is like super chordal. There's a lot of stuff happening and they like always use the bass pedals. And I was like, well, that's cool. I could like not have to worry about a bass player. And so, yeah, I got like my first organ when I moved out here, but you know, getting in with these guys too, like Patrick was, I mean, you know, he and I nerd out on gear all the time. And we still like, yeah, and we still nerd out on organs because it's like such a cool instrument and there's some cool subtle variations there. But I think like the organ was definitely present in The Serpent Between the Stars, and I think difference to me anyway between that record and this record, it was like also it's very synthesizer heavy, which this has a lot of synth on it as well. Patrick used this Dave Smith Prophet 6 synthesizer, which is just like melt your brain. But I feel like we got more into like organ and like mellotron, you know, stuff that has like that big expansive, you know, dramatic sound that kind of commands your attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, very if I can use the word aggressive to describe it, it's you don't hear aggressive in organ very often, but it is an aggressive sound. It's very, very forceful. I think it's a very, very powerful tool in the music that you're doing.
I think one of the cool things about it, and I really don't know a lot about like recording guitars, and there's like so many things you can do with like, you know, guitar amps and like what's the wattage and the cabinet and stuff. And I just feel like you can just plug a Hammond into a Leslie and there doesn't have to be anything in between. And you can just, to use Patrick's word, like dime it, like just turn it all the way up, and it overdrives at this like really amazing way. And yeah, I think we just use that a lot. And I'm not a very like licks driven kind of guy. Like the biggest like solo on this record, Hammond wise anyway, you know, Patrick wrote that, which was, you know, fun to learn and challenging. But I'm usually come in with something that's, I don't know. I just like to use like big chords or, you know, unique voicings.
Very cool. Patrick.
Yeah, that stuff really comes out in his other band. Yeah.
Awesome. So Patrick, you play guitar?
In the band, I've been the Johnny on the spot guy, depending on what our what iteration of the band shows up for shows. It's been something somewhat challenging. Like it's ranged from I've literally just sang some shows, and then other shows I'll just play guitar and sing, to playing guitar, singing, and playing keys, and you know, I'll have like a vocal effects pedal. Like I've had like a whole battle station that it's a lot, you know. So whatever we need to make the song happen is what I do, generally speaking, you know.
So okay, that's a very interesting position to be in. I mean, like you get
quality varies wildly.
Well, it's interesting to me because I only play guitar, but knowing how to play every aspect of a song is pretty challenging. I mean, to just go into it where you need it.
Well, I'll tell you this. I suck at drums the worst, because I've had Jason my entire adult life as a musician. So a lot of times I'll write stuff for him, but I would never try to play drums, because he's always been down the street with his kit. You know what I'm saying? So no drums.
Or in your basement.
Yeah, or in my basement. Freshly foreclosed Jason lives in your basement.
Yeah.
He gets kicked out of his house, and he knocks on your door, right? So be careful.
We're all grown ups now, aren't
we? Yeah.
It's happened to me.
Yeah.
Oh no, you do, huh? Wow.
Yeah, let's don't devolve into that, you know.
So being that the keyboards are so intricate, Patrick, how does it feel to be on the other side of that, listening to something that you wrote, somebody's interpretation of it?
Oh man, well, I mean, I feel like if you have the right band, it's beyond a pleasure. I like to see. Well, I mean, I definitely feel that with Jason. Nowadays, with modern like demo capabilities, I have training as an audio engineer. You know, I went to a 4-year program for it, and what it's possible now to just have a robot AI drummer, like when you just want to lay down some chords and figure out how long a song is or whatever, how it goes or whatever, and send it to these other two guys. That's kind of how we have been working since we made we didn't do that with this record, but that's how we've been working now on new stuff. It's always a mind melting experience to see what someone who's, someone like Jason or Chris, like take your idea and then just massively improve it. Like to me, that's the whole point of that's. I mean, that's why you're in a band with someone, is because they can come and annihilate your ideas and make them way better than they were before. You know what I'm saying? And if you're not doing that, you should just get a different band.
Totally.
And both these guys are like that. So, I mean, I actually, what the question that it's great that you asked that question, because really the whole, I mean, that's really what it's all about. That's why, I mean, there's people that have solo projects in their basement because they don't trust people. But if you actually find someone that or even two people to rub together like we have here, that you trust sonically with your ideas, that that you just have, you don't have to worry about if they're going to make it better or if they understand it to improve, to make improvements, then you should be in a band with those people, and they're rare as hen's teeth, both these guys.
That's so cool. Very, very cool. You guys have an
yeah, and I think
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it's also important to note that it takes a unique person to allow someone to interpret your material how they want to, as opposed to delivering a finished product and having another group of musicians basically cover your song. That's also a rare jewel to find. So kudos.
I could totally appreciate that. Totally appreciate that.
With minimal fisticuffs.
Jason,
I was going to say, I think one of the coolest examples of that on this record that just comes to mind to me was the Caramel Tide, and what Jason did in this, chorus section where he did two drum parts and kind of had this samba thing or something. It was, it was really, really cool. It was just such a cool flavor to put in this song, that was subtle, and really enhanced it.
Yeah, I totally got that from that. And I thought that was it's funny how little things poke out and you're like, ooh, what was that? And you kind of got to scrub back to listen to it again. Jason, I'm a huge hardcore fan, so I want to know how you translate playing hardcore drums, which is very distinct in its sound. How did you use what you learned playing hardcore? What did you bring from that into this band?
Well, I grew up on classic rock, and actually, I grew up on what we call classic rock, if you consider Black Sabbath and that kind of stuff, classic rock, which I guess it is. But then, in my younger years, obviously I found punk and hardcore, and this is kind of cheesy, but the band that really taught me how to play drums, the guy, John Stanier from Helmet, actually, is how I learned how to play drums. Just basically learning everything he did, all the first 3 records from Helmet. And then I just kind of took that, and throughout the years, as all the bands I've been in a lot of bands, a lot of different types of bands, I've always kind of carried the most important elements of his drumming and the stuff that I learned from playing that type of music, and tried to creatively apply it to whatever fits the genre. You know what I mean? So obviously a lot of the time that's, hitting as hard as you can is the first thing that people think about when hardcore, you know what I mean? And and that's a very difficult hurdle to overcome, especially with this new record. The entire record, I'm hitting baby soft and trying to reserve blasting the drum kit the entire record, and that's a huge hurdle. But when you're writing parts, I tend to write as if I'm going to be blasting the drums. You know what I mean? I tend to write like this is, and you write like it's like kind of like you said, like it's orchestral almost. You know what I mean? Like you can import dynamics into it and not actually, you know, destroy the drums in the same time. You know what I mean? So it's a challenge, but that's what makes this project interesting, as opposed to being in yet another hardcore band, which
yeah.
So but yeah, I think dynamics is the biggest thing that I've brought into this project, coming from hardcore. You know what I mean? Like your classic, you know, mid to late 90s, early 2000s hardcore, for the stuff that I listened to, there was a lot of importance on dynamics, where you'd have huge choruses and huge verses, and then like a breakdown, you know, or like a, you know, minimalist pre-chorus and that type of stuff. And it was all about dynamics and that kind of stuff. So that's what I take away for the most part.
I think, didn't you do like no rim shots on this record?
Yeah.
That was like an obvious goal. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's more stressful than you think. I mean, a lot of the drummer friends I have who grew up just like from that same world have that exact same problem. It's so much harder to play softer than it is to just blast the hell out of the drums when you've learned like that, you know?
Yeah. Do you think that because the songs on the record are so complex, that the stamina that you have from playing hardcore music enables you to kind of play orchestrally?
Yeah, I think so. You know, it also informs my creativity too, I think, a lot. You know, like, I'm not saying that everything I write is super creative, but my first instinct when Patrick hands me a piece of music is to not take the obvious path with it, you know? And I think that reaction and that inflection is a derivative being in that punk and hardcore scene, you know what I mean? And kind of being young and wanting to experiment with the type of music or with the music you're writing. And I don't think that's really ever left me. So like, if he hands me something that sounds like it's a straight up 4/4 beat, you know, that's probably the last thing unless it's like the last option, I probably won't do it, you know? And so I think that in itself kind of informs the feel, at least the foundation of these songs. And it's been fun.
You guys are I would say at the top of your game. There's a lot of, and I don't say that lightly. I really intensely listen to the record. I'm a very analytical music listener. Like, you know, you listen to every part, every instrument, which I'm sure a lot of musicians do. You know, you get the most out of it that way. So I really appreciate you talking to me about this. It's a really, really big record. It's very, I don't want to say ambitious, because I don't feel that you guys are pretentious in any way. I just think it's very grand, and it's really something I think people should give a try, that likes any kind of music.
Thank you, man. That's really, really, really kind to hear.
Dude, I really appreciate that, especially the non-pretentious thing. It's easy to make when you make a record that's like ambitious or has a lot of like new the conversation we just had about coming from punk and hardcore stuff, when you want to make something a little more fanciful or fantastic. I don't mean fantastic. I mean, like, you know, fantasy fantastic, something a little more broad, like you're saying. There's always the worry that your audience, or especially your friends who are in punk bands, are going to listen to it and be like, man, who is this Ponce think he is? You know, with these like weird, you know, with these choices that he's making. You know what I mean? It feels super. Making these songs felt like a sincere experience, but the difference between making them and the experience of listening to them, you're always worried. It's just hard to know that you're nailing it. You know what I mean? That you're getting that you're on target, and that you're making something that's also sincere. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate your words. That's a long way of saying I appreciate your words.
Yeah. Well, it definitely doesn't come off as forced. It seems very natural that you guys are. It feels like an experimentation and a pushing of limits, and which is very refreshing because I don't like to sound like the get off my lawn guy, but a lot of music is very very shallow, not personality wise. There's just not a lot of elements to it in modern music, and it's fresh for me to hear a band that's just not afraid to go out there and just let it all on the field.
I think one of the things that was really to me, one of the contributing factors to that too was like the environment that we recorded this record in, which was like we just got an Airbnb in Joshua Tree, like out in the desert, and just like went out there for I think it's like 4 days. Just had like 2, like vans worth of equipment. Just like went out there, set everything up. We're kind of like there's an amp in this bedroom. There's like the Leslie cabinet in this bathroom. There's an amp in this bedroom. And it was all just like running wires into the living room. And like the drums were set up in the living room and everyone was there. So it was like that live tracking feel and just also that feel of like, I don't know. It was cool. And, being in like super professional studios can sometimes be stifling and beyond just, the cost effective aspect of it too,
right.
Which is like, we don't have much time and this is like, a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, to bookend on what he's saying, we actually, we went with, we chose to work with our buddy Zach Tron, who does, he has studios in Denver called Bright Star Studios. He actually brought his whole rig down with us into that tiny little or into the Airbnb and helped us produce this record. And I can say with this band or bands in general, there can be a lot of drudgery, but making this record was a real fun experience. And everyone left it on the way back from the desert. We're all like, man, we should just do this every single time we're going to make a record.
I love to hear stories. I love hearing stories like that because I think maybe being in a larger studio sometimes, apart from the cost and the time that you have, it may be a little intimidating or sterile. Would you agree with that?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it also makes you feel like you're no matter how much time you have, that you're under a microscope and under the gun. You're always behind the 8 ball, recording you because you're constantly thinking about, oh well, the meter's running with how much places cost, or so and so's got to do their part next. I need to leave enough time for them, and like, oh man, I'm taking too long with this part, and are second guessing yourself. And so with this situation, it was like everybody's in the same room. What do you guys think? Want to do it again? Sure, why not?
It kind of alleviates that stress of time constraint.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. And you can always take a break and go outside and walk around the desert for a while too.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me. I would love to just travel to do that one day.
Yeah, man, you're invited for the next record.
Come on down, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
we got a console organ you can back.
Oh man. I do want to say thank you guys before we get cut off. But I really enjoyed talking to you and hearing your stories, and just, you know, shooting the shit with you. And you guys are super talented, and I don't just say that. I hope you know I'm sincere when I say that. I really enjoy listening to the record.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, appreciate
so
that.
much, yeah,
So,
really.
Thank you.
Nice talking to you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.